Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. The number of participants is still going up, so we're going to give folks one more minute to join the call. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. So thank you so much today for joining today's webinar. This is the product-specific webinar for the THL 3.0 English Language Arts and Reading product. I will say we noticed we did not specify grade bands whenever we released information about this webinar. So do just want to clarify that today will be 9-12 only. And we will be releasing information about the K-8 webinar at a future date. So for those who are attending planning to only listen to K-8, we do apologize for that. We will have more information on those grade bands shortly. But today, just want to welcome everyone to the webinar. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Kristen Hull. I'm the Associate Commissioner of Instructional Strategy at the agency. With me today, I have Jennifer Aguirre, who is our Director of Open Education Resources. Today, we will be sharing with you information about the 9-12 product. So before we get started, I do just want to quickly remind people, as you have questions, don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A portion of Zoom. So you can pick between typing in Q&A in the chat. We are requesting that you put it in the Q&A just because it helps us track better the questions that we've answered. We'll still look at the chat as well, but please put them in the Q&A. As we review questions, we'll either answer them throughout the portion of the webinar or answer them in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar if we can. For the questions that we cannot answer, we will be posting a FAQ document on the THL website that we will be continuously updating as we get questions. So we're not ignoring you. We're just, may need additional time to get an answer together or to find out some additional information. So with that, we will get started. Thank you everyone for joining today. As a quick reminder, this is where we are in the THL implementation webinar series. So we started with an adapt-adopt webinar series where we really focused on helping districts think through whether they should adapt existing materials or think about adopting the THL product. Now we're in a place where we want to do product-specific webinars for each THL product that we're releasing, where we give information about what's included in that product, what is that product, and what information is available to districts to help them think through whether or not they want to use it. We will then move to a product and stakeholder specific onboarding set of webinars where we are helping onboard teachers and principals who are interested in using the product. So it'll be additional information about getting started and onboarding. And then finally, we'll be offering a set of technology webinars, particularly supporting schools who are using Schoology, thinking about how to get that portion of the THL resources set up. On today's webinar, we will be focused on introducing the Texas Home Learning 3.0 English Language Arts and Reading product for the 9-12 grades. We will explore features of that product and share how it's going to support remote learning. And then we'll also share where you can access sample materials for review and when materials will be available. So just as a reminder for folks who are joining these webinars for the first time, we wanted to give a quick overview of what Texas Home Learning is. So Texas Home Learning 3.0 is an optional aligned suite of resources that educators can use in part or in full to support districts with this new learning environment. So there's instructional materials that will be available, there's technology supports, and there's professional development resources. Today we're going to be focusing on instructional materials specifically. So we wanted to make sure we start the conversation with a discussion around why instructional materials are important. And so really wanting to highlight here that there's been a growing body of research that demonstrates that student achievement can increase when you have access to high quality instructional materials that do a number of different things for teachers in the classrooms. So instructional materials that can help provide consistent opportunities to work on assignments aligned to grade level standards. instructional materials that support strong instruction to ensure students are deeply engaged with what they're learning, guidance to help teachers differentiate for all students, and then finally, helping teachers set high expectations for all students to meet grade level standards, even in the context where students have unfinished learning. So really grounding with why this is important and why as a part of THL 3.0, we are focusing on providing resources that support high quality instructional materials. On the next slide, we want to highlight a quick reminder that all Texas home learning resources are being designed specifically for this context. So all resources that we're making available through THL will have supports for remote learning for students in both asynchronous and synchronous environments. These are not off-the-shelf curriculums that we're buying and providing. They are curriculums that are being adapted specifically for this time. In addition, another thing I want to quickly call out is as materials are being adapted, they are going through an intensive review process prior to them being released to the field. So that during the review process, we'll check for things like TEKS alignment, we'll check to make sure that the materials provide supports for remote learning, and look at a number of different things to ensure that they are ready to be released to Texas districts. And so part of the reason I highlight this is because you will notice that materials are being released in waves. So as soon as we are able to review portions of materials through this intensive review process, we release materials and then continue to review future units. I also just want to highlight within the instructional materials component of THL 3.0, this is the set of subjects and grades that will be offered. So you see on the chart on the left, everything we're planning to offer. I do also just want to highlight districts. It is optional for districts to use all of these resources. They may choose to adopt all of them. They may choose to say, we just want to focus on, math K-5 and nothing else. Everything within this suite of options is optional, and there might be a number of different combinations of what districts use and what they don't use in terms of using the THL 3.0 resources. On the right, I also quickly want to highlight these 6 categories. These categories are the criteria that all instructional materials have to meet before they can become a part of THL 3.0. So there's 6 main criteria, and we'll cover those in a little bit more detail in the future slides where we share how the English language arts and reading product aligns to these 6 criteria. So again, today focusing on ELAR 9-12 with additional information on ELAR K-8 coming soon. So with that, I am very excited to announce that the Texas Home Learning 9-12 Reading Language Arts and product is Odell Education Texas High School Literacy Program. We're really excited to share some of the materials that are a part of this program, and today we can look at some sample teacher and student materials and provide some information on when you can begin accessing the materials as well. So as mentioned, these are the 6 criteria that are required to be included as a Texas home learning product. So the Odell Texas High School Literacy Program does include daily teacher lesson plans, student materials, unit assessments, and guidance for remote learning, as well as guidance on how to modify lessons for a variety of learning contexts. The materials will be available both digitally and in print with integrated activities that support all learners. Finally, there will be opportunities for formative and summative assessments integrated into each unit, and a built-in TEKS-aligned system of tracking student development so that teachers can adapt instruction. So as we go through sharing a little bit more about the Odell Education Texas product with you today, you'll be able to see how some of these things take shape in the product itself. I also want to quickly address a couple frequently asked questions that we get. One question being whether products align to the TEKS resource system, and another related to whether you need Schoology. So for the TRS question, THL and the TEKS resource system are 2 distinct and separate curricular products, both of which contain a scope and sequence that align to the TEKS. So the scope and sequence for each product is different, but both of them are TEKS aligned. With the Odell product, the scope and sequence is strategically designed so that lessons build on each other. And so it is not recommended that you mix and adapt the THL product scope and sequence if you choose to implement the THL product in a particular grade or subject. So it is recommended that you follow the scope and sequence with fidelity. For this particular point, we do know that a lot of districts are using the TEKS resource system, and so we do plan to provide guidance around if a district is interested in adopting THL, how they can think about transitioning with being able to do continuous learning if they are transitioning after potentially the first 6 weeks, second 6 weeks, third 6 weeks, etc. For the question around whether you need Schoology to use products, the answer is no. There's really 3 main ways that districts can access all of the products. The first is that we'll make products available on the vendor's website, which you can always access through texasHomeLearning.org. So through texasHomeLearning.org, you'll be able to go to the Odell, Texas website and see the materials. Additionally, if a district has chosen to adopt Schoology and develops an instance in Schoology, there will also be a way to move the materials into the Schoology instance for your teachers. And then the third way is if a district has not adopted Schoology but has a different LMS, a district will also be able to host the materials in a different LMS as well. So generally, Schoology will provide features that will enhance the product and student and teacher support when you are implementing the materials. However, you do not necessarily need an LMS to access any of the resources we're covering on today's webinar. So everything we cover today, you will be able to access with or without Schoology or an LMS. I do, however, want to quickly highlight the Schoology opportunity for districts who are potentially still interested. Just an update more holistically across the state, we've had 319 districts already sign up and another almost 200 that are close. So if you are interested in learning more and are interested in pursuing this as an option within your district, you can go to powerschool.com/Texas to get signed up, and they will work with you on how to move forward with that process. So with that in mind, I will pause and turn it over to Jen, who's going to share a little bit more about the Odell, Texas product.
Great, thank you, Kristen. As Kristen mentioned, my name is Jennifer Aguirre. I am the director of our Open Education and Resources team here at TEA. Very excited to talk with you today about our 9th through 12th grade English, Language Arts, and Reading product. As Kristen mentioned, Odell, Texas High School Literacy Program is our 9th through 12th product. And we want to highlight or start by highlighting 3 key features of the program. The first is the TEKS and ELPS alignment, and really wanting to highlight that instruction and assessment support student success in the unique context of Texas. And so students will participate in dynamic activities centered on rich text, which we're going to talk about a little bit later today, and topics as they develop TEKS-aligned literacy skills, habits, and knowledge. Another exciting feature is the remote learning aspect of the product. And so it is designed to support seamless learning in a variety of contexts, including a remote learning environment and an in-person brick and mortar environment with extensive remote learning guidance and tools. And then additionally, the product is customizable to support all learners. And so it is created to adapt to unique needs of students and classrooms, including a suite of integrated and optional activities and supports for students at various levels of mastery. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then student support materials designed for educators and students to use in very flexible ways. In addition to these key features, we want to highlight just some programmatic elements of the Odell, Texas High School Literacy Program. The first is the learning community. And so the materials really being designed to facilitate and support students who use the program to establish and expand their learning community with the idea that a group of students sharing a common learning experience, learning new perspectives, and contributing their own experiences to the course itself. Working in their learning community, students will then analyze and discuss complex ideas and texts which takes us to knowledge. The program is designed around knowledge of classic and contemporary texts and substantive topics. And so throughout 9th through 12th grade, or English 1 through 4, students will be exposed to a combination of both classic and contemporary texts and text sets to support their understanding and continue to build content and knowledge. And then the last is inquiry and agency. So the program emphasizes active learning through inquiry and the vital role inquiry plays in preparing students for college, workforce, civic preparation, in society, and then just the self-actualization of their lives. And so really wanting to be sure that inquiry and agency are skills that our students are developing throughout the course of 9th through 12th grade as they prepare for what's after high school. The program offers a comprehensive set of materials. You'll see the list here on the right, but at the programmatic level, materials include a program guide, a remote learning guide, and then for each English course, there is a course at a glance, followed by unit alignment guides. So these are TEKS alignment guides. And then each unit has a section lesson bundle, including lesson activities, section diagnostics, unit level culminating tasks or end of unit assessments, lesson level teaching notes, and a robust literacy toolbox. So we're going to dive into some of these today, and you'll actually get to sample a small portion of these later today. We want to also take a moment to highlight the rich texts and topics students will cover 9th through 12th grade. So again, English 1 and 2. Adopting districts would need to invest in the unit text, which include, as you see here, text lists that include trade books, which are in some ways the anchor text needed, as well as other copyrighted text. Educators would be able to purchase unit readers and other copyrighted texts included as part of, who want to adopt the program. And so you can see on the right, you'll see sort of the text title and a list of text offerings. And I think the headline here is really that while the materials themselves are freely accessible, there are certain copyright texts that would need to be purchased for any district who is considering adoption. In terms of the overview of unit design, each unit of study consists of a unit overview, culminating tasks, overview of unit texts, and a materials list. And so we're starting to try here to build a picture for you of what the materials design is and how the units are structured. So you can see at the highest level, you have your unit, and this unit, which would kind of translate to a unit plan, would include the overview, the culminating task, information about a text overview, which is actually kind of kicked off by this text overview that you see here. And then the materials list. Each unit is comprised of a series of sections consisting of a section overview, a TEKS-aligned diagnostic, and a text and materials list. So you can see we go from a unit. Each unit contains a series of sections. Each section includes about 5 to 10 individual daily lessons. And so within a section, you're going to have a section overview, you're going to have a section diagnostic. And again, the section diagnostic is an opportunity for continuous progress monitoring throughout the course of a unit of study. You're going to have the text, and then you're going to have the materials list. Going from a unit to a section, and then each section is comprised of a series of lessons, consisting of a lesson overview, a series of activities, TEKS and ELT lesson alignment, and the text and materials list. So each lesson, again, includes 5 or more unique instructional activities. And these activities really serve multiple purposes. In some ways, these activities really provide teachers with opportunities to customize the lesson to ensure they're supporting students to support all learners and meeting all needs in their classroom. It's a way to customize based on where your student data is. And it's also a way to flex the number of instructional minutes, because we know that campuses have various instructional minutes allocated for high school English. So to give you a quick glimpse at what these lesson activities look like, Over here on the right, you'll see kind of an outline for lesson 3 of the Great Gatsby. Each lesson activity is identified as either a core activity or an optional activity. Core activities contain essential content to prepare students for the section diagnostic and culminating tasks, whereas optional activities allow teachers to provide additional support and extensions for learning. And so you can kind of again see at the right where in this particular lesson, this is lesson 3 of Great Gatsby, there are 5 activities available for this lesson. Of the 5, it looks like 3 are core and 2 are optional. Okay, all of this is really summarized in one of the documents that you're going to have available to you today, which is this abbreviated version of a program guide. So I know that many people on this call are really taking this all in and processing and thinking like, well, I really just want a document where I can read more about this product. The program guide will be, is that document, and it will be available to you later today. It basically does summarize at a high level, the instructional approach that is taken by Odell, Texas High School Literacy Program, and does a little bit of a breakdown of what's included in these materials. And so this is a great place to start in terms of just understanding the product offering. Additionally, there is a remote learning guide, and this remote learning guide is actually a fairly robust document. What we have available for you today is just a preview of what's included in this guide. And so for today, you'll really be able to kind of preview the supports that are embedded within the content through both the content itself and through the remote learning guide. And then the other really unique thing about the remote learning guide in its full-length version is that it does offer a menu of options in both asynchronous and synchronous learning environments for literacy teachers and for high school English teachers to really leverage ways in which they can execute on things like annotating a text or writing workshop or vocabulary. So things are very common in a high school English classroom. This document really gives a lot of guidance into how to execute those both synchronously and asynchronously. Additionally, it also provides some common vocabulary for remote learning terminology and just helps build teacher context and educator context on a remote learning culture. And then finally, there is at the programmatic level a document for supporting all students. And this document really dives into, and this will be available today, it really dives into the approach that Odell, Texas High School Literacy Program takes to supporting a diverse pool of students. So our EL students, our special population students, our gifted and talented students, and the ways in which the materials and the lessons and activities can flex to really support a diverse group of student needs. Finally, some resources that are available today and that are part of the Odell High School offering are a robust set of literacy toolbox materials. So these materials also are designed to support success for all students. These materials are often tied to the lessons themselves and or activities within a lesson. Each material is designed for flexible use and they're available as PDFs and in some cases available as edited Google documents so that a teacher and an educator can customize for their own localized use. So some of the materials we've previewed today are going to be available. You can see our website down here below. So texashomeLearning.org /ELAR grades 912 Odell. And so there is the website for you. Or you can go to odelltexasoverview.com to access some of these sample materials. And so again, these materials, you'll see in terms of the literacy toolbox, the materials available for you today are academic discussion reference guide, forming evidence-based claims tools, and text-to-theme note-taking tool, in addition to some of the short guides we previewed earlier in the session. And then I know know Kristen already addressed some of the frequently asked questions, but one of the questions I know we get often specific to RLA is, will districts need to purchase the underlying text required to implement materials? I know you've been potentially following all of the conversations around Texas Home Learning, and so one of the things you know is that the materials themselves are openly accessible to districts. So districts can access the teacher-facing versions and the student-facing versions, and the assessments, the toolboxes and things of that sort. But specific to reading language arts, one of the things that is needed for implementation is the purchase of text. And so any adopting district would need to consider purchasing the trade books, which again are those sort of anchor texts for the unit. Some of them, for the example, Romeo and Juliet, which is a 9th grade text, some of them would be available in public domain. Romeo and Juliet is not a copyright text, but other texts such as The Great Gatsby, for example, would potentially be something a district who wants to implement would need to purchase. Also, many of the books, again, in the spirit of really building on some of the canon and some classical literature, in addition to building contemporary texts in, we've really tried to bring in some of those texts that are in public domain. But trade books would be something to purchase, and then unit readers. And a unit reader is really that text set that goes with any unit of study, and it includes all of the copyrighted texts for that unit. So articles, poems, short stories, things of that sort. And then there is always the option for a district to print those student and teacher-facing materials. Again, those teacher and student-facing materials will be available digitally, and so it is not necessarily something that you would need to print, but if you would like a printed copy for your students and or your teachers, that is something a district would need to consider. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Kristen, who's going to share with us a little bit more about implementation best practices.
Great, thank you so much, Jen. I will also quickly answer 1 or 2 questions that have come up in the chat. One question just around how long will these materials be available and free to districts? So the underlying curricular resources themselves, so the teacher lesson plans and the supporting student materials, we will actually have those available in perpetuity. So those will be freely accessible on an ongoing basis because they actually are open education resources. And so the license for those products will continue on an ongoing basis. And we will be working to continuously improve the product over the future years. However, the texts and the unit readers that Jen referenced, those will be things that the district has to purchase and determine whether that, once they purchase those materials, if they use those same materials or those same texts on an ongoing basis with their students. So these materials will be freely available to districts in perpetuity. We will also share a slide at the very end that gives you more visibility into the estimated release dates for the different units within the materials. So we'll just highlight that at the end as well. So to get at some of the implementation supports related to the product, we do quickly just want to highlight some implementation best practices that we recommend. So what you'll see with this visual on the left is a set of school system structures and processes that can be adjusted to align to a specific set of curricular resources. And so one of the things we recommend is really thinking through how can you design your school and or your district processes to enhance the use of the Odell Texas product. We also just generally recommend that there is some investment in upfront and ongoing training designed to help districts and teachers and school administrators use the product as intended so that you can see the maximum results in student outcomes. So as we move forward, you'll see that the blue circle for curricular resources becomes highlighted because I just want to highlight a couple things related to curriculum implementation best practices of the resource. So first, as we mentioned in the beginning, it is recommended that you follow the defined scope and sequence created within the materials to provide students with a cohesive English language arts and readings learning path. In addition, we do recommend focusing on mastery over a particular concept and comprehension of a complex text versus individual lesson mastery, as many lessons will build on building that mastery for the concepts and comprehension. Also, we want to highlight that it's important to think about allocating enough time within your daily schedule to support the effective use of Odell Texas in your classroom. So lessons are designed to be 45 to 90 minutes of daily English instruction. And Jen referenced some of the ways in which a particular lesson can allow a teacher to be flexible based on the length of time that they have. But really recommending you allocate 45 to 90 minutes of daily instruction, which I actually know was one of the questions in the Q&A. Each section also has 3 to 5 section diagnostics intended to monitor student progress towards the end of unit culminating task. And so one of the things we really want to highlight here with implementation is this recommendation to use the progress monitoring tools within the product to monitor student progress so that you can make sure that what you're looking at actually is aligned to what's been taught and what's been covered for students in the instructional materials themselves. We also want to highlight that it's recommended that you identify and provide resources around coaching and supports to teachers directly related to the Odell Education Texas High School Literacy Program as intended. So for example, if you've generally provided data-driven instruction supports to your teachers, how actually can you provide those supports very specific to the assessments and diagnostics included in the curriculum to help districts and teachers think about how to support teachers based on what they're seeing as a result of those assessments. And again, support teachers in developing just an ongoing knowledge and support for the curriculum itself. We also want to highlight some supports included in Texas Home Learning. So as a part of the materials, there'll be an overview of each module, as well as some supports for remote and hybrid teaching in an instructional setting. And again, Jen covered a couple of these things earlier in the presentation. We will also be creating some TEA tools that will help support the internalization of different units and lessons, and some coaching tools aligned to support the curriculum itself. So these tools are really intended to help provide support to teachers who are trying to implement the curriculum as intended in alignment with the scope and sequence, and really understand and internalize some of the lessons, as well as learn how to adapt them for students in their local context. We will also be sharing soon ways that you can work with your Education Service Center, who can also provide THL implementation support. We want to share a little more information about materials access and upcoming webinars, recognizing there's been a number of questions about that. So as always, you can go to our texashomelearning.website to access most everything with THL. So you'll be able to see an overview of each of the products. You'll be able to stay in the loop about upcoming events and webinars and releases. And then you'll also be able to access the vendor-specific landing pages for all of the materials. So when you go to texashomelearning.org, you will be able to see the 3 buckets of resources that are included within Texas Home Learning: the instructional materials, the technology supports, and the professional development. When you click on instructional materials, you'll be able to see all the grade bands and the subjects, and then you'll be able to click on the materials for a particular grade band and subject that you want to access. We also want to highlight that we will continue to do these webinars for all of the subjects and grades offered as a part of Texas Home Learning. So I know a number of you came to the webinar today thinking you were going to also be learning about ELAR K-8. We will have a future webinar to cover the ELAR K-8 product, and we'll be releasing information about when that webinar will be offered as soon as possible. So we'll share the information and make sure that it is up to date on the texashomelearning.org website for those of you who want to also learn about the ELAR K-8 product. And lastly, we want to give a high-level overview of when you can expect to see materials be released related to the Odell Education Texas High School Literary Program. So in September, we are planning to make available the program level materials and the Unit 1 materials for grades 9 through 12. Then on the right, you can see when the future releases of the next units after Unit 1 will be ready and made available to districts. Again, I do want to remind folks that the reason that we release materials in waves is that materials are being adapted for remote learning real time. So these were not off-the-shelf materials that we purchased. They were, publishers are updating materials for the current times. And each of the units is going through an intensive review process where we check for things like TEKS alignment, check for things like remote learning supports, as well as a number of other things, so that prior to releasing a unit, it has been reviewed ahead of time to ensure those things are present in the materials. This is the estimated dates for release for folks who are interested in using this product. I will pause really quickly to see if we can continue to answer questions in the Q&A as well. And just to go back to the previous slide, and Jen, we can keep it on that slide just so folks can continue to see it. Whenever we are showing the upcoming release dates, this is for online and print materials. So we'll be making those materials available both digitally and in print PDF formats as well.
Thank you, Kristen. I can answer or start to address a number of questions. I think somebody did ask how many minutes in a daily lesson. Kristen hit on that in this last section. But the lessons are intended to be pitched at 45 to 90 minutes, and a teacher can use those optional activities and core activities to vary the amount of content in any one lesson to flex towards the number of minutes the teacher has. Somebody asked, do districts have to sign up for this, or can teachers use it on their own? Odell is an open education resource product, or the Odell high school product is an OER product. And so it is freely accessible. I honestly do not know if you have to just like register your, once it goes live, if you have to register an email address. That may be the case, but other than that, you do not need to sign up. Teachers and educators will have open access to it.
One quick thing to add there is we do recommend that teachers look to their districts around any direction that a district has related to adoption of a particular product. So even teachers will be able to access the product on their own, but we do recommend that they work directly with their district to determine the district's plan for a particular subject area and grade band.
Great, thank you, Kristen. And then Jennifer is asking, would districts be able to use any of these resources with different, more diverse text selections? It's such a great question. I will say one thing that the Odell High School Literacy Program really aims to do is across 9 through 12 and across each unit of study to have within their anchor text and then within the text sets a fairly diverse text selection. And then each unit comes with an optional, or not each, almost all of the units come with an optional list of optional independent reading text. And in that context, in terms of like the optional text list context, teachers certainly and educators certainly in consultation with their, to Kristen's point, with their campus and district leadership can bring in some additional text for independent reading. But for each unit of study, there is a recommended text list.
Jen, if you could, I'm going to share my screen really quick. I'm going to go ahead and show folks how to access the Texas Home Learning site and how to access the materials on that site. So I'm going to share my screen where you can see, we're going to go here, we're going to share. So what I will show you is if you go to the, let's go to Texas Home Learning, texasHomeLearning.org. So when you go to the homepage, you will see the 3 main buckets of resources that we provide with Texas Home Learning. If you click on instructional materials, that will take you to a page where you can see all of the upcoming webinars as well as the recent webinars that we've completed. So that's where you can find the postings and the recordings. And then if you keep scrolling, you'll see all the different subject areas and grade bands that we provide. So you can come down and see grades 9-12. And if you click on product details, it takes you to a quick overview of the Odell, Texas education product where you can then explore materials on your own. So this will take you to the Odell, Texas landing page. And when you scroll down, you'll be able to see some of the overview for remote learning, overview for all students, and some sample materials that Jen shared about today on the call. So we will continue to update this site as additional materials are available. Go back to answer some questions. I'm going to stop sharing for now. We will be sharing, there will be some support and coaching provided that is for free with Texas Home Learning. There will also be a number of opportunities for fee-based professional development should a district want additional support. And the release date for the SLAR content, we will be making SLAR materials available in early grades. And so we'll be sharing when those webinars are as soon as we have them scheduled. We are also having separate conversations with ESCs where we will be working with them to determine how to be supporting THL implementation. So we will be having those conversations directly with ESCs. Okay, that looks like that's all of the questions for now. Thank you so much for joining. We will plan to stick around for another 3 minutes or so to see if folks have additional questions. But if you don't, thank you for joining, and we look forward to continuing conversation related to the ELAR 912 product. Okay, we still have not received additional questions, so we're going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you again so much for taking the time to join us, and look forward to continued conversations soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, team.